Let me scoot this back and get comfortable so I can really sit down and get this all out. And I'm doing it on this platform. Maybe I should do it on Facebook. I don't know. TikTok, I'm relatively new on. But I got a story, and it's going to take a good little while to really unpack and get through. And if this isn't necessarily for you, that's cool. Those who are going to be present, some of y'all will know. Some of y'all can help. Please fill in the gaps for those who are going to join thereafter, because I'm going to be here for a hot little minute. And the following is going to be my recollection of events to the best of my knowledge. And I got to put all of this just out there on Front Street. I'm going to take y'all back about maybe 10 years, like within the last 10 years. Going back 2014, 2015. Now, I went viral first in like 2015, but that's separate and apart from this particular point. At the time, our current mayor, Mayor Latoya Cantrell, and others, our current district attorney, Jason Williams, Selena Moreno, and the like, these group of people, at various points in time throughout the teens, the 20 teens, you know what I mean, 14, 15, 16, we're all on New Orleans City Council during the time in the development of the HardRock Hotel. Now, these are the developers. HardRock doesn't necessarily own the building. They were just going to come in like Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't build those buildings. There's a building and he goes and slaps his name on it. All right, cool. Nonetheless, these local developers are going to build this building in downtown New Orleans, but in order to do that, they got to get certain things handled, like the building where it sits is the historic Woolworths, the place where blacks and whites sat down first in New Orleans in order to protest segregation. So it's got to go through city council about what we're going to do with the building. It's got to go through historic development land commissions. They're going to keep the counter, right? And then they're going to tear the building down and then build this building that's going to be entirely too dang high, which also has to go through various points in time, height variances, to get them to be able to build this monstrosity of a building in downtown New Orleans, taller than, you know, what is permitted at that time. Nonetheless, it gets approved. And then thereafter, they start building the building. Let's go forward. It's 2019. Now, I've been, at this point, very outspoken on social media, building a platform and whatnot. And I'm in the classroom, or actually 2019, the fall of 2019. I'm actually with a girlfriend of mine out in the Rocky Mountains, to be completely honest. And I get word that this building in New Orleans falls, the HardRock, right? There's reported that there are fatalities, but I really don't know that much about it. Get to school the following weeks after, because we're on fall break. That's why I go out of town. Get to school, and some of my cadets, because at the time I'm working at New Orleans Military Academy, some of my cadets are showing up late. They're missing their breakfast. Well, why are they missing breakfast? You know, well, some of them got to catch the bus. Some of them coming from the east. Some of them are getting caught up. Being that this building went down, it disrupted all the transportation system. So some of my students are actually missing breakfast. Some of the only meals that they're going to get is what they're going to be at school. And more importantly, I had cafeteria duty, so I'm the first person they see when they walking in the building. I'm like, yo, what are you doing? Y'all missing formation, you missing breakfast, yada, yada, ooh. All right, so this is the building's gone down, right? Let's fast forward, because the building goes down in October of 2019. Let's follow the chronology of it. Fast forward to January of 2020, Martin Luther King Day, January 2020. Windstorm comes through. Now, mind you, 3 men are reported as fatalities. Anthony Margette, the building goes down on Saturday. They don't pull Anthony Margette out until Sunday afternoon. This is the key part. The other 2 men that are unaccounted for, Quinyan Wimberley and Jose Ponce Arreola, are still inside the building. Right? So now we fast forward to January of 2020. Quinyan Wimberley, where he was killed on the 11th story of the building. And the manner in which he was killed, he was initially covered by a piece of sheetrock, but the cranes that were attached to the building posed the danger, so they wanted to blow the cranes. And when they blew the cranes unsuccessfully, only successfully to the point that nobody else got hurt or injured in that process, but they dang sure one wasn't supposed to be dangling over Canal Street and the other wasn't supposed to be impaled 12 feet into, or whatever it was, into North Rampart, right? And damaging the streetcar line and interrupted transportation for the next 2 years thereafter, right? But nonetheless, when they did that, they blew off the sheetrock and it exposed Quinyan's legs. And what they decided to do was to cover his legs with a tarp. Now we fast forward, I apologize, to January of 2020. Windstorm comes through, whips off the tarp. Somebody takes a picture, posts it on the internet. I don't see it. I'm in the classroom all day long. I have students are coming to me and asking me about this tarp that blew off the HardRock. I'm like, what? Who cares about this tarp? Like, that building went down months ago. Like, I just did, for the first couple of times I'm told this, I blow it off. Like, we got work to do. Like, objectives on the board, entrance tickets, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on a grind. I'm not thinking about that. And then they're like, by the end of the day, I'm like, yo, you are like, I don't even know at this point, the times that somebody's done told me this, what is the issue with this tarp? They're like, it's got that black man behind it, Miss G. What do you mean? What do you mean? Because I know that 3 people had gotten killed, right? But I guess I made the dumb assumption to assume, you know what I mean? Like, they got everybody out by this point, because it was like months after. At that point, that's when I was like, okay, source 3 before me. Not only did these children pull up the picture that they had saw, but they actually pulled up the video of the collapse itself that is utilized. It's the clearest shot of the collapse, and at least the most publicly used one, in which you can actually see Quinyan coming out of the building on the 11th floor, and you see him look up, and then he takes two steps back and he trips and he falls. Literally just feet away from surviving, right? And then the manner in which he was left, his legs were hanging over the side. As I said, publicly exposed to anybody in the French Quarter, North Rampart and Canal, right? And this is January of 2020. There's protests by the end of the week, which I attend. I don't march necessarily. I don't even get there till the very end. I make it out in front of City Hall. I'm just attending. City Council meeting the following week, and this is all relevant because Jason Williams is president, Helena Moreno. I hope that some folks in New Orleans are up in here, and I hope that they're paying attention. And I hope that they could tag somebody else from New Orleans so that they can listen to this story. Because folks who really want to know the backstory behind the HardRock, I am currently spilling the tea. Hold that thought. So to that city council meeting. Jason Williams is presiding. Again, I'm just in attendance. There are various people. There are people there that are speaking for the whistleblower, Delma Ramirez Palma, who spoke out about them warning the supervisor days in advance. And he had subsequently, just days after the collapse, got coincidentally stopped by Wildlife and Fisheries and then subsequently got deported. There were advocates there. There were community advocates. There were worker advocates. There were union advocates. There were family members advocating. And all this is going on in the city council meeting that takes place at the end of January in 2020. At that meeting, Jason Williams and city council received letters from Mayor Cantrell and the Office of Inspector General. And they're asking basically the city council not to investigate the collapse. Like, not to create a committee and stuff like that because they don't want it to interfere with their own investigations, correct? Okay, Jason Williams reads those letters and points to those letters and urges and then cites precedent in other cities and other remotely similar situations in which their city council moved forward with these things as a checks and balances measure. Just like as you see in New Orleans, you see people in your city council pulling people before them as a legislative body to answer questions and interrogate and things like that. That's what the committee, in my mind, was established to do. But just to be sure, I had sat back and watched all of that. Not partake. I didn't give any comments or anything at that time. But in February was when I decided to start protesting. And then by the end of the week, that's when I had lost it after going after seeing the Segway tours showing up to the collapse site and to the site where Quinyan's legs were. And at the time, I remember doing that video, y'all, and that video that went viral. I remember seeing that Sam the Segway guy. I had been out there every day that week after school. And all day that weekend. And I can't count how many times I saw him come there. But I heard him give the speech to these people in the very same parking lot that I'm sitting in, right beneath his legs. So that way when people walking in the parking lot and they want to stop and take pictures of this half-collapsed building in downtown New Orleans that has somehow become the most unintentional above-ground tomb that New Orleans has ever seen, even for New Orleans where we don't bury our dead below ground, there was no way for me to fully convey that his legs were publicly visible besides turning the camera around and actually showing you. And then when Sam the Segway guy came around, I snapped because everything that he was saying that they were working to get the bodies out was completely contradictory to everything that was being told to the community, to the families. Those bodies at that point in time were stuck within the bureaucracy of it all. It was too dangerous to go get them out. And who's going to pay for it? Like, we want to blow them up and we want to tie GPS trackers around the ankles and put some little spray paint stuff around where the bodies are. That way we would blow it up, even though they're only skin and bones. If they're even skin, they're just bones because it's already months later. Maybe we'll be able to give something to the families, not because we couldn't have. You could have removed them very much from the very beginning, but because you just slept on it all. To the point that it became such an issue. So nonetheless, back to that point. It's February 8th that I confront Sam the Segway guy for holding the damn tours to the parking lot, telling these people that they're working to get the bodies out, because if they were, I wouldn't be here. Right? So in any event, the next day is my birthday. That's when I don't even go out to eat. Like normally I go out with my girlfriends on my birthday, and I just decide to tell my girls, if you want to come, I'm going to build a memorial at the HardRock. Because there is nothing here that represents, that shows that this is not just a tragedy where Anthony was killed and removed. This is the space where two men are currently inside. Still, you can see one of them from right here. And the fact that I got so much backlash, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but if you pay attention to all my advocacy up until the HardRock, I didn't curse publicly. I didn't even respond disrespectfully to folks, even to those who I would have been justified in responding with that type of negativity and matching that type of energy. But I never did that, not until the HardRock. So when folks say that I've changed, yeah, a lot done changed me. This changed me forever. Because you can't sit here and say that I'm down bad for any methods that I took thereafter. Because all of my methods would have been null and void and unnecessary had the people who are responsible for handling this did what they were supposed to do. It had never came across my classroom. It had never trampled into the steps had you not done Miss Irene's baby like that. But nonetheless, this is what happens. At that meeting, Jason Williams and the Lycan City Council, they create the Canal Street Special Collapse Committee. Basically, the first meeting is going to be in March, right? Just a couple of months later. Giving these bodies time to get the investigation. Now, mind you, they cited the OIG and the urgings from Mayor Cantrell not to investigate none of this. track that, right? Pushing forward in April, OSHA issued some violations, serious violations, serious and willful. The willful violation says that Heaslip Engineering knowingly didn't comply with a legal requirement or acted with complete indifference to the safety of their workers. That's the willful violation that Heaslip Engineering got. Now, that was 4 years ago. About to be 4 years. Right? That was 4 years that was. Now, Heaslip has challenged that. Beyond that, all the other violations, to the best of my knowledge, have been reduced to just couples of thousands of dollars and slapped on a wrist, or completely all removed from the collapse. But that's in April. Finally, after the protesting and the boycott, we started boycott HardRock. Now, mind you, Mardi Gras is February of 2020. Which means that they divert the parades that would normally go down Canal Street, because the Hard Rock's there. They can't go down Canal Street. They divert the parades, still have Mardi Gras, and they divert the parades around the Hard Rock. So we're boycotting Hard Rock all throughout that. We create the memorial that's all there. As far as City Council, the meeting in March never happened on the Canal Street Collapse Committee. Despite our public officials, Helena Moreno, Jason Williams, Kristen Palmer, who were all on City Council at the time, all of them saying yes to the committee. I don't care who was meant to lead it. That's besides the point. Who said? The point is, it's your job to make sure that our workers aren't being killed on the job, or whether Heaslip Engineering or because the city inspectors aren't showing up and doing their job. And at the least of which, tens of millions of taxpayer dollars went into this disaster, period. Businesses destroyed, families completely devastated, dozens of people injured, some of them permanently. Like, the destruction of the transportation, the ripple effect to getting to my students all the way on the West Bank. Like, in any event, fast forward. The willful violation comes out in April. Now the mayor comes out. They do have some people that want to blow up the building, but they can't get they want the liability to insurance. They want basically a waiver that says if anything bad happens, this is the demolition company. If anything bad happens, we're not going to be liable for it. Couldn't get no insurance on it. And then the mayor ultimately blames both the Hard Rock International sent boycott Hard Rock a letter, as well as the mayor made a comment about not being able to blow up the building. Great. Because according to you, that was the only way to take the building down. That was your method. That's why it took so long. That's what you wanted to do. But even 3 months of you trying to get that done still didn't happen, because had you got that done, I'd never been there in January, correct? Follow the logic. But more to the point, Heaslip comes out with that. Now they can't demolish the building. Now they got to take it down piece by piece, and they want to go around the building. They want 360-degree access. Coincidentally enough, the buildings because all of these buildings sit side to side, which is another reason why you're not going to get a liability waiver on that, because you got the Sanger Theater across the street that you already done damaged the historic roof when the cranes and all that fell on it. You got the New Orleans Athletic Club right behind, and then all of those buildings share a block, like they share a wall. So how are you going to blow up this building without taking out the whole block? Right? So they blame the Hard Rock, they blame the boycott, i.e. me. But in actuality, what liability, what insurance company is going to give that? So in any event, moving forward, they want to blow up the buildings or tear down the buildings. I get word that the Historic Development Land Commission is going to be having a hearing. Coincidentally, those buildings that are on side that they want to demolish are also historic buildings, and they're also owned by the same developer of the Hard Rock. So in my mind, these dudes think they're slick. They're trying to tear down these buildings that they otherwise probably couldn't touch to the same degree because they are historic buildings, right? And they're going to use this as an excuse to demolish the building to either A, consolidate the land and build an even bigger and better Hard Rock, or B, have prime real estate right next to a Hard Rock that they think they're about to rebuild. One or the other. In any event, I wanted to get into the HDLC hearing. So that morning, I went down there and I showed those buildings across the street from the Hard Rock that they wanted to tear down. I went in, that's what I went down there for that day. Then I started the petition to get me into the hearing. And then within an hour or so of me starting the petition, next thing you know, the fire chief, Tim McConnell, issues a statement and says he's going to supersede the hearing and just grant the waiver in order to tear the buildings down. In my mind, I'm thinking that they're doing it right then. And I go down there and then go what I did at the building in order to get myself arrested. And they arrested me and charged me with 2 felonies. Unauthorized entry into a business or a dwelling and unauthorized entry during a disaster or emergency, although I failed to see what is the disaster or emergency, whether it was COVID or was it that site. Because if it was the Hard Rock site that y'all thought was the disaster or the emergency, who the was treating it like an emergency besides me? Because by this point, it is now damn near 8 or 9 months after the collapse, and the bodies are still in the building. I've been protesting for this at this point for like 4 months, right? And then I get arrested, right? Then I get arrested. Hold that thought. Give me a second. I get arrested with my ride or die, Justice Von Fidelis, in May 5th. In May 5th of 2020. All right, Juju, come on. I get arrested with justice at the Hard Rock, May 5th of 2020. By that point, they've already, justice, come on now, go. Come on. They ain't going to, there's my justice. Yeah, they're not going to blow up the building because they blame the boycott indirectly, I guess, me for it. Although, again, I would like to take the credit for that because that would make the boycott look like we actually did something. To be honest, I think it had more to do with the insurance than it had to do with anything. Y'all just been playing around waiting for an insurance to grant you a full liability waiver in case y'all blow up the pipes underneath the Hard Rock, or you tear down somebody else's building, or you destroy the roof at the Sanger with the explosion, or you damage the hundreds-year-old building behind you, the New Orleans Athletic Club. Like, I would like to take credit for that and toot my own horn, but the reality is I don't think it was that. In any event, I get arrested. I'm only in jail for maybe about 8 hours. I'm not going to even get into the details of all that because that's completely irrelevant. What I will tell you is that George Floyd gets murdered 20 days later. And at this point, there's nothing more I can do in the city because all they have to do now is to find people to come in and take that building down piece by piece in order to get to Quinyan and in order to find Jose. And that's going to take time. And then just so happens George Floyd gets killed. And then I go out to Minneapolis. And then I spend the summer basically going from literally front line to front line, from Minneapolis to D.C. to getting tear gas back on my own Crescent City connection at the BLM protest out here early in June. Then I go back in New Orleans in July because they're starting to work specifically towards removing Quinyan. They finally get to Quinyan and remove him August 8th. Of 2020. Then they remove Jose Ponce Arreola August 17th of 2020. And then they work for the next year and a half to basically bring the building down to the ground. So yeah, they eventually did. Within about 90 days after I got arrested, that's when they got them out the building. Now, the better part of the question, when we were boycotting, I had asked the families, as a collective, you know what I mean? What does justice look like to them? Because I've never done anything. Like, mind you, I did advocacy, but it was more so speaking on subjects. I had never been a part of anything like this. I had never organized anything like this. I did not know what I was doing. And half the time, even to this very moment, I still don't know what the hell I was doing or what I am doing. All I know is that after I got arrested, and this is where folks really need to lean in and pay attention, because you want to know what changed me? Here's the irony of it all. At that time, and it shows up on my memories, at that time, I was having dreams. I was having dreams of Dr. King. And I was having, at that time of the Hard Rock, I remember it was January and it was Martin Luther King Day. But I remember going through a lesson. There's two things that I love about Dr. King, two of his favorite, if you want to call them, works. One, his speech, Been to the Mountaintop, to the Tennessee sanitation workers before he gets killed. The second is the letter from Birmingham jail. And coincidentally, you there? Are y'all still there? Because somebody called. Is everybody still here? Okay. So I was already teaching that. I don't necessarily need to wait for Black history. It's so crazy. It's always Black history, right? So in any event, I'm going through the letter from Birmingham jail. And what is particularly funny is that being that I had no experience and I did not know, I used it as a blueprint. Because within his letter from Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King lays out the steps for nonviolent civil disobedience. 1, collection of evidence to determine whether or not an injustice exists. Now y'all know why I just attended the protest, didn't say nothing, didn't even march. I was just present. Now you know why I attended the January 2020 hearing with Jason Williams and Helena Moreno and Kristen Palmer and all them. Why? Didn't speak. Collection of evidence to determine whether or not an injustice exists. You negotiate. That's what the boycott was. Honest to God. The petitions, building the memorial and putting the QR codes, getting the billboards that we raised money for, the 2-story billboards to go outside to be posted up next to the building, the pamphlets that I passed around and put on the entire perimeter of the Hard Rock building, the apartment that we raised money for so I could sit there and document every single minute of the removal of them. Like everything. That was me trying to negotiate to get people to recognize their own humanity and to be human. Crazy me, right? Doing that for clout that I already had, right? That was me negotiating. 3, after that OSHA report, and around that time that OSHA report came out that gave that willful violation to Heaslip, I got a house in Slidell. Now, my friends and family, nobody really knew it at the time. But I spent money on that house that I really didn't have. But that was me self-purifying. Step 3. Meaning, they've now issued this willful violation and nobody's holding hearings. Nobody's really taking it seriously. Nobody's really getting investigated. Like, how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to take criticism from folks? Well, I'm already doing that at that point because plenty of people are sitting here telling me I'm crazy. I'm crazy. I even got a student, Hassan Veal, I taught U.S. history the year before, but is in my class during my off period, his senior year, and he's sitting here telling me, you crazy, you out here fighting for a dead body, you know what I mean? And what does it tell you, Miss G, that, you know, even as a black man, you could do the right thing? Miss G, you asking why we pulling on car doors and why we out here carjacking and cutting up the way that we are, when at the end of the day, you want us to display a level of humanity that adults in the room ain't even displaying. You telling us that we could get a good job. We can stay out of trouble. We can get engaged to a New Orleans police detective. We can go to work on our day off covering for somebody else because we got an upcoming inspection. We can do everything right. And you know what that's going to matter? When other people mess up, they going to still leave me out there down bad, hanging on the 11th floor, North Rampart and Canal Street in the Hard Rock. Because that's Quinyan. We see death more visible than dawn, he said. How you argue with that? In any event, step 3 was self-purification, and that's what I was doing at that house. How far was I willing to take it? To take the criticism? You know what I mean? You crazy? Are you willing to take blows and not retaliate? Are you willing to go to jail? Hell, are you willing to die? And that's when I went out there, and that's when I came to the resolution that, you know what? It might take all that. Because if it was my baby in that building, and it didn't need to be my baby for it to matter. And that's the difference. And then 4 is direct action. Collection of evidence to determine whether or not an injustice existed. I did that. You try to negotiate. I did that. You self-purify. I did that. You take direct action. I did that. And do you know what it did? I cannot tell y'all how many of my friends were like, yo, I agree with what it is that you're doing. Like, your cause is righteous. These men should not be in this building this long. Your cause is righteous. But I don't agree with you going and getting arrested and you losing your mind and doing all this stuff behind it. I don't agree with all that. But you know what's crazy? I planned a million lessons in my life. But this was a lesson plan that I ain't never planned for. Because at the end of the day, what I know is my students in that classroom, regardless, my students know how the hell I roll. And I would go to the ends of the earth behind them. And before anything was going to happen, they were going to know that regardless, I was going to see this through because Hassan was right. How am I going to sit here and expect how are we going to sit here and ask more of our kids than that which we're willing to demonstrate? Because look at our leadership here. You want the kids to act more grown than the adults, leaving somebody's baby on the side of a building for 302 days? Come on now. How you going to sit here and argue with Hassan? I can't. Nor can I sit here and tell him that I'm going to get justice for him. You want to know why? Because he was the first of 5 students that I lost to 6 feet of dirt in a span of a year and a half. Why? Because death is more visible than dawn to us, Miss G. But you want us to go and do the right thing and stay out of trouble and get a good job and do all the right things. And even when we do, this is what you're going to do. All right. Nonetheless, I followed the steps. I did it. I self-purified. I direct action. And for those that had the criticism, I divert you back once again to the letter of Birmingham jail. Because if you pay attention to that letter, Dr. King wrote that to who? My fellow clergymen, meaning his brothers in cloak that should understand nonviolent civil disobedience and direct action above all else. In that same letter, he is addressing the people who are sitting there saying you prefer a negative peace absence with the absence of justice. A negative peace with the absence of justice rather than have any kind of tension. You're going to sit here and say that I'm down bad for coming out here, and not to say, and I don't want to compare myself to Dr. King in any shape, form, and fashion. I can't hold a candle. But at the same point in time, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to the same fact that while I'm in OPP calling and my sister's on my phone and she's on live, I'm pointing out the same thing to the characters in my comments section who got something to say. It's really funny because I ain't see your name on the petition. I ain't see you the 300 something odd days that I was out there protesting, not a once. I ain't seen a cent be donated. I ain't seen a letter to your city councilman or a letter to Mayor Cantrell or a letter to Jason. I ain't seen nothing, right? So, to that point, it's the same. Because you can't sit here and say that you agree with the cause, but you're taking issue with the methods. Why? I tried everything else. I literally lost my mind on live. Trying literally everything. And what's crazy is you think, and this is the part that changed me, so really lean in for it. You actually called me crazy for going crazy behind witnessing the craziest shit one could ever see in their life. Because as a historian, I have looked and I have researched, and if I am wrong, please, for the love of God, correct me. But show me historically, when was the last time that an American citizen was killed on American soil, whether in a construction accident or work-related accident or whatever, and their body, it's not like at sea and the bodies were never recovered. No, I'm talking about you can stand on a public street in downtown New Orleans in the French Quarter and you can see the body right there. Like right there for almost a year. Show me where that happened in the United States, anywhere. Surfside, within 60 damn days, they blew up the building. But what's crazy is, and to flash back for a second, remember how I got blamed for the boycott and the publicity, and that's why they couldn't blow up the building? Juju, stop it. Come on. Hold on, y'all. To the point. I am more crazy for going crazy behind being present to witness some of the craziest shit you've ever seen in your life, because I've never seen that before. And to this date, I have yet to come across a story that matches this. And you mean to tell me that I'm more crazy than the crazy shit that brought me out? Once again, my passion isn't the problem. Your apathy and indifference isn't. It's scary because it told me that if it were me in the building, one of y'all would have let me ride. And what does that say about us? So fast forward. I get arrested, I get on the road, they get them out. By February of 2021, I beat the charges, the 2 felony charges that they charged me with for protesting to get Quinyan and Jose out. So I'm on the road still. Matter of fact, I'm in Baltimore at the time that, or I don't remember actually where I was, but I beat the charges. And then I go to Minneapolis for the trial of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. I get hurt, injured on the front lines, and that's when I fill out my law school application. And I've been in law school ever since. Now, mind you, this is now June 2021. Kristen Palmer, who was on city council, one of the main proponents that pushed to help the developers get the building that high. Kristen Palmer is running for re-election. She's reaching out to the families because she wants them to do PR stuff for her because she has an upcoming election. Now, Jason Williams, mind you, at this time, who was president of city council, backing up. President of city council held the hearing in January, created the committee. Supposed to have a meeting in March about the collapse, never happened. Fast forward, though, they get the bodies out in August. Then the 1-year anniversary is October 12th of 2020. Jason Williams shows up because he's running for district attorney. And he states at that thing, I got this on my recorded. He says that these things don't just happen. There's people who are held responsible. And if elected, I'm going to pursue it. January, he takes office. He is the new district attorney. So I'm expecting him to hit the ground running with it. You know what I mean? But that doesn't necessarily happen. Fast forward to, it's now January of 2021, he's taken office. Fast forward to June of 2021, Kristen Palmer is now up for election for October. Kristen Palmer is reaching out to the families because she's doing basically the same thing. Showing up. I tell the families, use these people, these politicians who are politicking, use these politicians as they use you. Because at the end of the day, you want to prevent when we sat down as a collective, there were 4 things and 4 objectives. Get the bodies out of the building, get some kind of legislation passed to prevent something like this from happening in the future, prevent the rebuild of the Hard Rock, and then get some answers, accountability, and justice. Get somebody criminally charged for the deaths of these 3 men. Like, what? In any event, moving forward. It is now June. Kristen Palmer is reaching out to the families. Kristen Palmer gets the families to do a press conference because Hard Rock wants to rebuild the building. Kristen Palmer and the like do not grant the permit for the rebuild of the Hard Rock. So the Hard Rock's not going to be built the way it was. They still own the land. It's still private property. All that land on that corner still belongs to the developers, to the best of my knowledge. So they can do with it what they want, but they are not getting approved to rebuild the Hard Rock what it was supposed to be, because that's what they asked for. They asked to rebuild the exact same building that they failed to build in the first place. Moving forward, so that ends. I go to law school. Hassan gets killed in August. And then October, Kristen, getting further down the line, closer to election time, Kristen Palmer calls the families in to talk about an OIG. Now, remind you, Jason Williams had that hearing in January, and OIG, the Office of Inspector General, and Mayor Cantrell had urged City Council not to investigate, correct? It is now, at this point, 2 years later. Jason has been in office since, I hope to God people in New Orleans are paying attention to this. It is now January of 2021 when Jason gets elected. Kristen Palmer is hitting up because she's trying to get elected in the next election in the fall. He's already in office, but Kristen Palmer, in trying to get her elected, she's now trying to come to the family's defense and stuff like that, trying to utilize the families in order to get elected. And that's when she calls the families in, and they're asking basically an update. David Hammer from WWL is pointing out that the statute of limitations for felonies is 2 years. So it's about to come up within a couple of months. Kristen Palmer is bringing us together saying, well, I'm going to push OIG to come in and answer questions. They need to produce a report, yada, yada, whatever. Jason Williams is saying the same thing. It's OIG. I'm waiting on OIG to issue a report and yada, yada, whatever. All of this for the 6 months, for the 2-year statute of limitations that's approaching. Ultimately, they issue a report. OIG does. And it's like 12 pages recommending only malfeasance and like documents, like falsifying records for city safety inspectors. And that's it. So the OSHA report that I mentioned before was challenged by HESLP, as I mentioned, and it's still being tied up in litigation. So the fact of the matter is, and why all of this is relevant and tying all of this in, is we are now approaching, we're 8 days away from the 4-year anniversary, which means we are 8 days away from the statute of limitations on felonies. And I've already considered other things. Like I've already considered federal charges, exhausted that alternative, tried to consider the federal charges, you know what I mean? But there's an issue with the federal in order to have a longer statute of limitations, and then any potential crimes don't necessarily carry mandatory hard labor, so that affects the statute of limitations. I've even considered things about, I asked the district attorney today, why can't you, if you are waiting on whatever, I'm not going to say anything, that's part of the issue, because HardRock changed me. I was really, honest to God, not all this aggressive. I was always passionate, but I was never this aggressive and disheartened. So I changed a lot, but that's because a lot changed me. And again, I don't know who I'm more disappointed at. If I'm more disappointed in these people we put in power, or I'm more disappointed in the people who put them there. The people who continually put them there, despite the fact that they show and demonstrate that they're not within your best interest. And you settle for the mediocrity of it all and the bullshit of it all when you really deserve better. And you look at somebody like me, like I'm crazy for caring, and you think that I should have to explain it to you or break empathy down as though empathy isn't free. I became silent and not putting out content the moment that I came to the realization, that folks want to be more entertained than they want to be enlightened. Say it all. I've said that a couple of times in the last couple of years. And this is what I mean behind that statement. All of this. Because another thing that Dr. King said is that, we start to die the moment that we stop fighting behind the things that really matter. And I found it very difficult to swallow that this is how far we've gone. And I find it utterly heartbreaking. Besides the ultimate thing that the elephant in the room is this. Because in 8 days, the conclusion of this story will be this. Stick around. Unless something shakes within the next 8 days, the conclusion for this story, this building goes down, kills 3 workers, injures 36 more, destroys businesses, completely interrupts the streetcar transportation system so much that it's affecting my cadets and my students over on the West Bank and Algiers across the river from downtown New Orleans, nowhere even near this building collapsed. You got families on top of that. You leave 2 men inside this building, one publicly visible to everybody, and not to mention tens of millions of dollars into blowing up the cranes, into securing the around the perimeter and putting 24-hour security on the perimeter, and the damage that it did to the Sanger and all the liability with the New Orleans Athletic Club and all the various businesses that were not permanently closed but were permanently damaged, you know what I mean? Or were damaged and will never fully recover in the same way that the ways that they were or would have been. The conclusion to all of that, to protesting over 300 days, you know what I mean? The criticism, the deaths of 3 men, and all of that, despite flaws in engineering, because things like this don't just happen. Buildings don't just fall, right? City inspectors not showing up doing their job. Despite all of this, the conclusion of the story will be the only person that got arrested was the teacher who did the absolute fucking most. And that breaks my heart. The teacher who did the absolute most, and it still wasn't enough. Ain't that crazy? And the truly most disheartening thought of it all is that these families blame themselves in any capacity. And there's 3 families, but there's, like I said, there's dozens of injured and workers and stuff like that. And there's like 400 different lawsuits that are going on right now. But as far as, there's the civil side, but as far as the criminal responsibility, our justice system, I don't know why I've always felt it, and I've said this, and I stand on this. I know for a fact, now more than ever, that justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Even where justice is rendered, sometimes it still doesn't feel like enough. Like how I felt outside the Hennepin County Courthouse after that verdict came in on Derek Chauvin for murdering George Floyd. That wasn't justice. I didn't feel justice. Justice would have been a system that would have never led to that man's death to begin with. But it was hope, which is why I filled out my law school application, which is why I'm still on this journey, which is why I know that I have to get this story out. And not just by me telling it, but I will tell you what I told the district attorneys and everybody that was involved in this from top to bottom. I do not write history, but I damn sure intend to tell it. And wherever you fall in that history, that's fine with me. And more to the point, I self-purified a very long time ago. And I am very much that crazy that I will destroy myself if it comes down to the point of standing on something. I would gladly throw myself under the bus in any capacity. If it meant, I guess that's just secondary suicide and y'all can call me crazy. But yeah, because I gave my word and I expect other people to keep theirs, especially those who are put into positions to serve and to protect. Because you volunteered for that job. Nobody made you do it. Which is why when people ask me if I'm running for office, I understand what comes with that. If this weighs on me the way that it does, if this weighs on me, how do you think I will be as an advocate? Period. I understand what lane, now probably more than ever in law, that I'm supposed to fill. And more than anything, I don't want to lose myself in the process. And while I have made so many damn mistakes, like I said, I would rather bear it all and lay it all out there if it meant it is what it is. I take office and running for office very seriously, which is why I'm spending the time investing into myself and putting myself through law school and learning how to shut up sometimes and just listen. Because I don't have it all figured out and I don't have the answers. And clearly by this, in 8 days, ultimately the boycott will have failed in the capacity that, as far as the accountability, like I said, I will have been the only person to have ended up in handcuffs as a result of the HardRock collapsing. Technically, if they wanted to, they could still charge me with it because I'm still within the statute of limitations of 4 years. And wouldn't that be something? But it's crazy because it just goes to show, despite there were issues within city and safety permits long before the collapse, people were already getting indicted before the collapse. The collapse was leveraged against them in order to plea out on those indictments, and then city inspectors go in. You mean to tell me out of all the liability to go around for the deaths of these 3 men and the harm in the millions of dollars, you mean to tell me that the caption's gonna read me? Just me. I'm having a hard time processing it. And I don't know if that's the answer. It's one of the reasons why I'm getting it off my chest now, because if I have to listen I don't know if I'm honest to God, y'all, because you don't understand. One of the things that Quinyan's mama always says is, even if you are a woman who has lost a child, you will never know what it's like to lose a child the way that I lost a child. And I felt that. And I promise these families that one way or another, I will see this through to its conclusion. And I intend to. And where justice can't be found in one, I know that it will be found in the other. And I don't write history, but again, I damn sure intend to tell it. And that's wherever the cards fall. That's the only solace I'm taking in the disappointment of this all. In trying to process and work my way into the fact that you had 4 years. And to sit there and say, well, we've been looking at this. We've only been in office for 2 years. You've been district attorney for 3. You were the president of city council the year before. You created the committee, Jason. You didn't hold any hearings. Before you left city council, you didn't pass any legislation. Matter of fact, it was left for somebody else to be passed according to them. And by their own words, one of the authors of it actually said that it was a watered down version that eventually got passed. Why didn't you do it? Why weren't you holding these hearings and pulling OIG in months before? Because what it looks like to the public, sir, is that to the public, you create, because the public was there. The tarp blew off. They were protesting. They were present. You were running for district attorney, right? In public, that day, you created the committee to investigate despite the urgings from OIG and city council, and then you didn't follow through with anything. And then you made promises at the 1-year anniversary. And all of this is a sum totality of the chronology of Jason Williams, the district attorney in New Orleans. TARP blows off. You have the protest on Friday, which you were there. And then the committee meeting on Wednesday. You cite OIG, Mayor Cantrell, you still create the committee. So to the public, you were looking into this. You were going to pull OIG and these investigative bodies before you in order to answer these questions and account for the millions of dollars that are going to go into this, and the deaths of these 3 men and the dozens injured and so on and so forth, the businesses. That's what you were going to do to the public. But when it came down to March, it never happened. You showed up to the 1-year anniversary. Again, going for district attorney. This doesn't just happen. I'm going to do it. Had a meeting at the end of October for the Canal Street collapse. So it's obviously still in session to some degree, but then you don't follow through. There's nothing. That's when you supposedly draft the legislation that you don't get passed and then you get elected in January. Fast forward to June, Kristen Palmer is running. David Hammer starts asking questions for the 2-year anniversary. You're saying, I'm waiting on OIG. Kristen Palmer, why are we waiting on OIG? And where's that legislation that Jason had? We mainly handle budgeting, which is when y'all go on my page and you see that first video of me look like I'm blowing somebody down, not the chill one, but it looks like I'm blowing somebody down. I'm blowing down Kristen Palmer because the day before she brought the families and me in and said that they don't really necessarily do stuff like that they mainly do budgeting and zoning. A whole lie. A whole lot. You got legislation sitting right there. What about that legislation that Jason and them did before they left? Oh, yeah. And then you want to call the families in and start talking about that legislation. The calm video was me after they passed the legislation. Suffice to say, shouldn't have been waiting on OIG to turn over anything, because New Orleans City Council, both before and after Jason, Helena Moreno, should have still pursued it, which was brought to Helena Moreno's attention on multiple occasions. Multiple occasions. I'm wondering if JP Morrell is interested in all this. I'm wondering, maybe it's just because I'm holding out hope that it can't just, like, this just can't be it. You know what I mean? But maybe it is. I don't know. But that's where we are. And I had to get that off my chest. And document all that. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what else to say. That's how I feel about a lot of things, to be honest. Because I can't want more for people than they want for themselves. And when people ask me if I want to run for office or I intend to run for office, I have the heart to serve. But I don't know if the hearts of our people are ready to love like that. And that's partially because of my experience with the HardRock. Because somehow your advocates become more crazier than the cause that they're advocating for or against in many cases. And that shit gets exhausting. Mainly because, and what has kept me solid throughout all of that. The families, fans, strangers on the internet who have shown me time and time again that despite the inhumanity of it all, that there really is goodness. And I think that that's probably the thing that holds me through that. I have hope that one day fuck. We got so much work to do. I think that's it, y'all. I thank y'all for letting me get that off my spirit, because I have wanted to for some time. And with the anniversary approaching and the clock ticking, and it seems apparently there is no way to really stop it, I don't know. But whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. And like I said, I ain't going to write history. But I'm damn sure going to tell it. And wherever everything falls, I'm going to apologize in advance. Because if y'all leave the story ending at that, where I'm the only person that ended up in handcuffs as a result of all of that, if that is the end of the story, it's not even revenge to sit there and tell the truth. And the truth gonna get told whether I'm here or not. Know that. So, know that. All right, y'all. My gosh. Well, I wasn't intending on crying like that, but I figured it might come out. It's crazy. All right, y'all. I don't know what else to say. Although I did say I was going to go on TikTok later, but it is what it is. And it's going to be what it's going to be. And that's it. Ooh. All right, y'all. I'm going to call it. Y'all have a beautiful night. Do y'all think I should post this? I don't know if I should post it. It's kind of long. I don't know if anybody's going to actually watch it, but I guess I'm just kind of like in awe of it all. A little bit disappointed and a little bit pissed, to be honest. Still, in any event, all right. Love y'all. Teacher life. Lawyer life loading.